Superhero movies don't necessarily have to be such high-budget affairs, with plenty of smaller-scale films in the genre working just as well as the most prolific blockbusters. Between the special effects, licensing costs and procurement of high-profile stars to drive sales, superhero movies are often very expensive, usually breaking multiple records for the most expensive films ever made, especially when the MCU took off and everyone tried to start doing their own connected universe, and it adds up. The genre isn't typically thought of as one in which low-budget projects can excel, but many films have disproved this in the last 20 or so years. Granted, budgets considered small for superhero movies can still easily be in the 50 million plus range, which is quite lean for a blockbuster but still staggeringly expensive compared to the average indie movie. However, budgets with even tinier budgets than that can still come up in the superhero genre, particularly early on when the films were still getting their footing. Original superhero movie characters and clever ingenuity can go a long way in making a lower or even micro-budget superhero movie work. Welcome to Popcorn Programming, and here are the 10 best low-budget superhero movies ever. Pop pop! In number 10, we have Brightburn with a budget of $6 million. Few names are as venerated in superhero cinema as James Gunn. James Gunn's movies like Guardians of the Galaxy trilogy and The Suicide Squad were strong enough to grant him an entire cinematic universe under his creative control with the DCU. But in addition to adapting popular DC and Marvel characters, Gunn worked as a producer on lesser-known original superhero flicks like 2019's Brightburn. These days, the concept of an evil Superman is quite a tired trope, given like Homelander, for example. But Brightburn tried something new by imagining a version of Clark Kent that became psychotic as soon as he got his powers. Enter Brandon Brayer, a human-looking alien child who crash lands on Earth just like Superman, only to go berserk when his latent powers activate, becoming the villainous Brightburn. Even if Brightburn doesn't fully deliver on the premise of its concept, it makes a relatively lean budget of just $6 million go quite far with thrills and chills. We go from $6 million now to, almost 10 times that with Deadpool at number 9, with a budget of $58 million. Considering the success of Deadpool and Wolverine becoming the single most profitable R-rated movie of all time, it's hard to believe that the first film in this series had such a scrappy production. But it must be remembered that Ryan Reynolds had to fight tooth and nail to get the concept to manifest, only really being able to do so thanks to a CGI animated test footage leak that took the internet by storm. Deadpool still had a nearly $60 million budget, however, for an X-Men movie with a big star attached, that's practically peanuts, especially given how much Deadpool ended up making. Indeed, Deadpool is quite smart with the money it does have, not going too overboard with its CGI and using one big action set piece in a relatively cheap location as a framing device. These constraints are made into benefits as the strong kinetic fight scenes and unique fourth wall breaking sense of humour are allowed to take over, giving Deadpool a unique edge that no amount of money could buy. It's important to praise just how tight and effective the first Deadpool is with such a limited budget, considering its high profile lead. In number 8, we have Joker with a budget of $55 million. Even more thrifty than Deadpool, Joker took a chance on forking over a popular Batman villain for an auteur like Todd Phillips in order to coalesce into a singular villain. Far from a traditional superhero movie, Joker instead plays out more like something from the filmography of visionary director Martin Scorsese. He's even got Robert De Niro in. The plot follows Arthur Fleck, a mentally unwell aspiring stand-up comedian barely making ends meet as a clown in a city that disregards him. Joker is a character study that remains quite daring considering the broad mainstream appeal of its intellectual property. The more poignant and grounded tale allows the budget to avoid the tolls of big action set pieces, CGI characters or expensive Batmobiles. In fact, if anything, Joker's budget feels far too big for the scope of what it tries to accomplish. Nevertheless, the movie works as a fascinating character study that provides an insight to a man on the brink of insanity. In number 7, we have Super with a budget of $2.5 million. Brightburn was far from James Gunn's first tango with smaller budget superhero movies using original characters. The honour must instead go to 2010's Super, a black comedy that satirised superhero movies just as they were truly beginning to take off in popularity. Starring Rainn Wilson of The Office fame, the movie follows a fry cook named Frank, who becomes a vigilante after a prophetic vision inspires him to save his wife, who has fallen in with a dangerous drug dealer. In order to save her and clean up crimes big and small in his city, from child endangerment to cutting in line, Frank becomes the Crimson Bolt, beating his foes into submission with his trusty monkey wrench. Frank's hilariously realistic brawls and cheesy catchphrase of "Shut up, crime!" sugarcoat an otherwise bleak narrative featuring murder, sexual assault, drug addiction, and failed romance. On an incredibly minuscule budget of $2.5 million, Super takes a realistic look at hero work that other films don't dare to touch. In number 6 we have Mystery Men with a budget of $68 million. Super may have gotten in on the superhero movie parody while the getting was good, but 1999's Mystery Men made fun of comic movies long before it was cool. Granted, this was just after George Schumacher had done it with Batman and Robin, but still. This film's loosely based on the Flaming Carrot comic universe, which revelled in the absurd. Mystery Men follows a superhero team of unimpressive members with only mildly useful powers. Examples include a man who can turn invisible only when no one is looking at him, a man with powerful flatulence, and a woman psychically connected to a bowling ball bearing her father's skull. Useful. Mystery Men's eccentric cast of oddball superhero misfits is a joy to watch under the leadership of Ben Stiller's Mr. Furious. The thinner budget makes the film even more charming, with standout performances and the first appearance of Smash Mouth's All-Star before Shrek ever got it, to making it a welcome surprise. A scrappy, endearing production, Mystery Men deserves more respect as a low-budget superhero spoof that was truly ahead of its time. In number 5 we have The Toxic Avenger, with a budget of just $500,000. There are superhero movies with smaller budgets, and then there are astonishingly cheap micro-budget films such as The Toxic Avenger. Made for only $500,000, The Toxic Avenger is another early superhero movie parody that follows a normal janitor who is horrifically disfigured by an accident involving toxic waste, though the process also leaves him with incredible powers. Using his new abilities for good despite his fearful appearance, the Toxic Avenger is born, taking on the worst criminal in his city as well as the bullies behind his accident. The funniest part of the Toxic Avenger is just how gruesome the titular protagonist's methods become after such a short time. Cheered on by the citizens he protects as he eviscerates his foes. This provides for a scathing critique on superhero culture, but it also shows off just how impressive the Toxic Avenger's prosthetics are on such a trim budget. A silly and rabid cult classic, few films have managed to leave as big a cultural impact for as little production money as The Toxic Avenger. In number 4 we have Turbo Kid, with a budget of $60,000. In the contest of low budgets, The Toxic Avenger still can't hold a candle to Turbo Kid, whose budget didn't even crack $100,000. An underrated post-apocalyptic movie as well as a superhero flick, Turbo Kid combines the two genres in a unique version of the civilization that ended in the 90s. Steeped in nostalgia for the decade, in the barren wasteland a young boy inspired by the superheroes of old stands up to a vicious warlord who exploits people for water. Turbo Kid cleverly balances both genres by allowing its apocalyptic landscape to be just as silly as it is dire, conflating dreary and whimsical tones into an odd mix of flavours that somehow works. BMX gear and loud 90s accessories help compensate for the small budget with the costumes, and the derelict shooting locations certainly make the financial limitations of the film obvious. But what Turbo Kid lacks in production value, it more than makes up for in creativity and heart, and is fondly remembered by the few who've seen it. At number 3 we have Tank Girl, on a budget of $25 million. Speaking of comic book movies set in wacky post-apocalyptic wastelands, 1995's Tank Girl had some more weight to throw around thanks to being based on an actual comic book heroine. The film centers on a woman who is captured and tortured by a massive mega corporation for the sin of having her own water supply. A true crime, her circumstances breaking her mind into becoming the nonsensical Tank Girl. Stealing one of the company's tanks, Tank Girl teams up with Jet Girl to deliver water back to the people of the wasteland. Despite such a barren budget, Tank Girl does an impressive job of bringing the iconic art of Jamie Hewlett, also famous for co-writing the virtual band Gorillaz, to life. The wacky world-building and in-your-face humour certainly aren't for everyone, but the movie works as a trippy romp through a bizarre post-apocalypse with plenty of vigour to spare. Even if the budget clearly ran dry at certain points, particularly obvious with the sudden transitions to animation, Tank Girl is worth drinking in for the visuals alone. At number 2 we have Chronicle, on a budget of $15 million. Less of a traditional superhero movie and more of a found-footage horror film, Chronicle nevertheless provides a thrilling tale of powers gone wrong. Capitalising off the success of Cloverfield, the story of a group of teen friends who gain telekinetic powers after stumbling upon a mystery object is told through a series of video journals. Before long, tensions within the group cause one boy, Dane DeHaan's Andrew Detmer, to become a selfish villain known as the Apex Predator. Chronicle is grounded and bleak tale about what might realistically happen should a teenager be given incredible powers. The slow descent of Andrew is a terrifying one to watch, and the low budget helps with realising the authentic feel the film aims for with the found footage framing device. Proof that superhero stories can excel when hybridised with all forms of genres. Chronicle is an impressive testament as to how clever application of special effects can go a long way with a small budget. And at number 1, we have Darkman with a budget of $14 million. Before he hit the big leagues directing the first major Spider-Man movie trilogy, horror darling Sam Raimi made a pass at presenting his own original idea for a hero. 1990's Darkman posits Liam Neeson as a scientist developing synthetic skin for use on burn victims. After becoming horrifically burned himself by a criminal gang, Darkman is born, thanks to an experimental procedure that overloads the adrenal glands, resulting in enhanced strength. With his newfound powers, Darkman goes on a rampage of revenge, using his synthetic skin to impersonate the gang of ne'er-do-wells by recreating their faces. Darkman has a lot of odd and jumbled ideas, but Sam Raimi's trademark camp and camera savant status is as powerful as it has ever been on such a modest budget. Bold, gruesome, yet relatively unheard of, Darkman proves that superhero movies don't need huge budgets to be great. And that's our list, so what do you think? What's your favourite low budget movie ever? Let us know down below. If you've enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and click subscribe if you are new here. That's all for now, so thank you for watching, and we'll see you later. Pop pop!